Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor at USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked, locked. Here we go. Your dial is set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class today. Jason, thank you for engineering at Genesis Communications Network, the powerhouse in communications. I'm Vincent Finelli, and Kyle's with me. Today, we're going to be talking about tolerance. And we're going to be talking about Vincent's 10% less theory. Those are the two topics for today. Tolerance and Vincent's 10% less theory. Welcome, Kyle.
Good morning. And our tolerances haven't got anything to do with Black Lives Matter. I should preface that.
Right. And it has nothing to do with black and white, but it does have to do with black, red, orange, yellow, green, and I don't know if there's any white in there, but it certainly has to do with black and green and red and orange and yellow in terms of tolerance. I'm not kidding, and neither is Kyle. We are absolutely not kidding. So, class, if you think Vinny and Kyle are off their rocker, and we've jumped to the other side. No. What we're talking about is things don't fit anymore. The tolerance is off. And when you buy replacement parts, the tolerance is off so much that parts don't necessarily go together anymore. Now, in the good old days, parts used to fit. You could go to the store. If you had a lawnmower, you could go to the lawnmower store and you could buy a replacement pulley, belt, blades, air cleaner, whatever it was. And you knew it was going to fit because it had a brand name that you could recognize, like Carter carburetor. It would have the, Cadet part number. It would have a Gates, belt part number, and those parts would fit. Champion spark plugs, you knew when you went to put those parts on, there was like 100% certainty that it was going to fit. Today, that is nowhere near the case. If it fits, it's like winning the lottery. Kyle, am I kidding?
No, you're not kidding at all, Vince. I have been finding that more and more and more, and it's interesting to me. I don't know if you've noticed this, but you know, when we used to change out carburetors and stuff like that, when we would tear them apart, you'd take an old, say, Quadrajet or something along that line, and there would be 4 holes drilled in it, and there'd be 4 studs sticking up on your intake manifold, and it would literally just go right down on it perfect. I mean, you know, you didn't have to work at it. You put the gasket under it, you put the carburetor down, you bolted it down. Anymore, it's like these parts and stuff we're getting have slots. And they're, you know, so because of the machining is so poor, that they're slotted, have a slight slot to them, an oval, rather than a perfectly round hole like it's supposed to be. That, you know, that's just one little tiny thing, but, everything is seemingly that way, and they expect the gasket to do the job, you know, that the machine work should be.
Yeah, and in the building industry, it's thank God for the drywall guy because he covers up all the mistakes. Well, now it's thank God for the oval or the slot because no one can seem to figure out how to manufacture the holes right to fit on the studs. And you know, Kyle, when you were saying that, you were talking about Quadrajet. That's a General Motors 4-barrel carburetor. And that particular carburetor, if you needed to, you could bolt a different brand carburetor on and it would fit the same studs. It wasn't like you had to have that exact make and model carburetor and they would change it every 6 months. So you'd have to get, try to find that very one and find out that it went out of production. And that's what's going on right now. What we're finding out is that if you have I'll just tell you a story. I was rebuilding yesterday. By the way, Sharon and Kathy did a fabulous job yesterday. I wanted to thank them for doing such a great job and providing me with a day to work on the farm. So, getting back to what I was doing, I was rebuilding a gearbox. And this particular gearbox was for a John Deere belly mower. Belly mower meaning this is on a small tractor, not one of these little not one of these riding mowers, but an actual diesel tractor, small diesel tractor, 20 horsepower with a 5-foot belly mower. And it has a gearbox on it. The gearbox, I took it apart because there was some play in the gears that I didn't like. So I took it apart and I needed two things, an O-ring and a nut. A nut that is probably somewhat proprietary to this gearbox. And so I called John Deere and I gave him the name of the model of it. I called a John Deere dealer about a John Deere mower. And so I gave him the make, the model of the tractor, the mower. And, the guy said to me, gosh, that's an old tractor. That's an old mower. Now, when I went to buy this thing 20 years ago, used, it's 30 years old. The dealer that I bought it from, the John Deere dealer, didn't say, listen, Vinny, I just want you to know that when you go to buy parts for this thing, later they're going to tell you this is old. They don't tell you that. And they don't tell you that the parts get discontinued either. And they got to go looking for them, in some strange parts warehouse that only they seem to know about. The rest of us can't find. But anyway, and then they said, well, we can get it. And the nut and O-ring, about $5 and change, which is a lot of money for those two little tiny parts. But I was glad to be able to get them. Now, here's the kicker. John Deere was known, people would buy John Deere tractors because, number one, they believed they were better than the other brands. And maybe they were in some cases and maybe they weren't. But what John Deere did better than anybody else was they had a parts network. So you knew that if you had a John Deere, whatever it was, you could get parts for it and you go to the dealer, and if the dealer didn't have it today, right now, they'd have it for you in the morning. Well, the mornings got stretched out now. Because I was told that, we used to be able to have it in 2 days. It used to be tomorrow. Then it's 2 days. Now it's 7 to 10 days. And I better be thankful that they can get it. I mean, that's kind of the attitude. That's outrageous. And since when is a tractor that's 30 years old? Since when? That's my newest tractor. So, my other tractors, the one I use all the time, are from, like one of them's 1974 and one of them's 1984. And I expect them to have parts for them too. Why not? So, anyway, this broadcast is about frustration with parts not fitting, and we're going to give you specifics. Now, if you think that we're just going to talk about tractors and that doesn't apply to you, well, it's going to apply to you because we're going to tell you about the other parts that you probably are working on or going to work on, and you're going to find out what we found out, they don't fit. And we're not kidding. So Vincent's 10% less theory is about the Chinese parts and Chinese products. So, for example, I think that as a rule, an unwritten rule, a lot of Chinese parts, the manufacturers say, but we don't want to use, we're going to copy that wrench, that socket, that breaker bar, whatever it is they're copying, socks, pulleys. They say, but we're going to do it with less material. We're going to do it with less strong steel. We're going to make it look good, but it's not going to be anywhere near as good in terms of durability and quality and fit. The finish will be good, but the fit won't be so good. So my 10% less theory is that that's what they do. At least they take 10% out of whatever it is they're building. Kyle, does that seem to fit with what you found?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Vince, you just reminded me of something I was at a pawn shop the other day, just kind of looking through some of their tools and stuff, because sometimes if these people pawn great big, toolboxes full of tools or something, they'll just take them and dump them in a great big bin, and you can look through there and sometimes find some really good buys. And I found a 13 millimeter wrench, which is not common in your smaller wrench sets, but it is used in places where the 13 millimeter is used in places where there's more complication, or where they want more they want a technician to work on it. If you'll find it in real hard to get through places, a lot of times, at least what I have found, it'll be something along the lines of a smaller bolt. It'll be an odd size, one that you don't normally come in these things. So I was looking for a little 13 millimeter wrench, and I found one, and all of a sudden I looked at it. I can't remember. I was sitting there trying to remember the brand, but I looked at it, and it looked to me like what they had done. It was a 12-point closed end on one end and open on the other end. I really was looking for a 6-point, but I thought, okay, I'll look at this. So I looked at it, and it looked to me literally like they had sprayed the zinc coating or some kind of a chrome type coating on this thing, because the 12 points that were on the inside of it were rounded. The thing looked like brand spanking new, but there was no sharp corners to them, so that when you put them on a 13 millimeter bolt, for sure I can guarantee you, if you had to put much torque on there, it's just going to break. I mean, it'll spin it out. It's like, you find it everywhere. Plastic parts don't go together and snap together the way that they should. You can, very rarely do you have something that fits perfect. It's like you said, it's like winning the lottery. If you get something and it goes right in the hole, oh man, it's a relief. And what gets me too, Vince, the other day I was thinking about this. Have you ever thought, could you imagine 25 years ago, could you imagine that you'd be looking for some kind of a part made in Mexico, and that was the good stuff? Because the stuff from Mexico is way better than anything you can get from the Chinese. It's like you look at something, if it's a part's made in Taiwan or Mexico, it's almost a relief. But anyway, that's I can't even fathom that.
Kyle, you can hear that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That is an air cleaner. Now, that's one of the it's fascinating to me. We didn't talk about this at all, yesterday, but, Kyle and I come up with the same things independently without discussing them. So that was the package of an air cleaner that says Kohler, Kohler, made in Mexico. And that was one of the things I wanted to talk about. I wanted to contrast why I bought this air cleaner. It just arrived a couple days ago for an old Cub Cadet tractor, 1960 model Cub Cadet tractor. So 1960, that's 60 years old. And I'm going to contrast that with one that's like 20 years old. You won't believe the difference. We'll be right back. Kyle's with me, and originally during the opening of this broadcast, we talked about tolerance. And I said black and green and red and orange and yellow. So black would be Poulin. Now, if you look at the riding lawnmowers like at the Chinese factory outlet, there's a Poulin Pro, which is substandard in my opinion. And that's black. Green would be the ones they saw that say John Deere on them. Red might be Snapper. They might be Troy-Bilt. They might be Toro. Okay. Orange would be the Husqvarna badge. Yellow, Cub Cadet. So that's why I said those colors. And when I mentioned the air filter, after Kyle mentioned the air filter, I'm holding a Kohler air filter for a Cub Cadet made in 1960 or so. And I decided to buy a new one. I went to eBay and I looked, and you can get them for like just under about $7 shipped, make in China. And if you look at the pictures, you'll see the pleats, the folding of the air filter media. And you'll see that the pleats are farther apart. So there are fewer pleats. That means less material. That means it won't filter as much dirt. That means you'll have worse fuel economy. So for your lawnmower. So what I did, instead of spending $7, I spent $9. And this one says Kohler. Now that's the brand name of the engine. It's a cast iron engine. And this was designed in the 60s. And this lawnmower from 1960 is still running. I have to use this one because the new one that we bought 20 years ago keeps quitting on us. So this is a 10 horsepower, 42-inch cut. It has a cast aluminum mower deck. It has now from 1960, the original front tires, the original rear tires. It's got the original mower deck, the original mower wheels. And probably it's on its fourth or fifth air cleaner because we keep buying the Kohler brand. There is a tremendous difference between the Chinese products and this one that's made in Mexico that says Kohler on it. And that's where my Vincent's 10% less theory comes in. The Chinese products seem to have 10% less. If you buy socks that are made in China, they come up 10% less up your calf. So they make them shorter. That's socks. If you buy tools, they're 10% thinner. And then when you go to the other thing we're going to talk about, tolerance, Kyle was talking about wrenches. They use a lot of times substandard steel. Now it's great for that guy that doesn't, or gal that doesn't know how to use a wrench and says, I've got a wrench that's 13 millimeter, but when you go to use it as a mechanic might, it's not going to work right because the tolerance of the wrench is probably off, which means that it's probably going to wobble on the nut because it's not tight enough. It doesn't fit tightly enough because the tolerance in manufacturing of that 13 millimeter opening is not precise enough. Now, if you hold up two wrenches, like a Chi-Com wrench, versus a Craftsman made in USA or a Snap-on made in USA or a Bonnie or a Williams, or a Herbrand or a Matco, or a Proto or a SK or SK Wayne, you'll find that the precision of the American-made wrenches, sockets, everything is way better. And if you look at the blade thickness of a Chi-Com wrench, a Chi-Com screwdriver, you'll find that it's not as wide, not as thick. It's less. It's part of that 10% less theory. Kyle?
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned blades. You just reminded me of something else. I love cold steel knives. I have quite a few of them. And a while back, a couple of years ago, my son bought me for Christmas, this really nice it was a Sportsman Brothers of Bushcraft American-made knife. It's just amazing. So I kind of put my old, I had what's called a Master Hunter, and I had a gun show coming up, and I put it out on the table, and I sold it because I figured, well, I'll just never go back to it, But man, do I love the design of the Master Hunter in cold steel. But cold steel has had I'll finish this on the other side, but cold steel moved to China. So I'll tell you the rest of the story in a little bit.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear this. This is probably going to be a great story about what has happened to the product and where it's being made. Kyle's with me. Bert's going to be joining me for hour number 2. We'll be right back. I'm looking forward to hearing the story about the knife. Kyle, please continue.
Okay. So anyway, I went ahead and at the one gun show when my son bought me that real nice knife, and it is an exceptional knife. Don't get me wrong, because I've used it extensively and it stays sharp. It's just heavy, It is probably, I don't know, it was about probably 25% to 30% heavier than my original Master Hunter that I had that was a cold steel. But so there was a huge gun show coming up a while back, And I thought, well, man, maybe I'll be able to find another master hunter there, because it's got a nice long rubber handle that you can really get a hold of if you're in, gutting out an animal or something, which is what I use it for. I hate to be, explicit, but that's what I do. I hunt and fish, and I use my knives or tools. Anyway, I could find the Chinese version of the cold steel, and I looked at it, and your 10% rule was so exact. The thickness of the blade was Chinese model, and I could have gotten that for about $40. And I thought, man, I just don't want to do this. I just don't want to buy this. I don't trust it anymore. And so I kept looking around. There's over 400 cables there. And sure enough, I stumbled upon one that was a USA-made Master Hunter that was there, and the old boy wanted $80 for it. And I sat and talked to him a while and different things, and I waited. I thought, well, I'm not going to spend that kind of money. I'm just not going to do it. I figured $50 was about the most I was willing to spend on another knife. So I waited through Friday, and then I came back on Saturday. And about Saturday evening, a lot of times them gun dealers are getting a little wore out, tired. So I was talking to him, and I said, well, would you take $50 for this knife? And he said, oh, yeah, I'll take $50. It was so funny to me. I was so glad to get that knife back. But here's the kicker. So one of the first things that Cold Steel used to come out with was a little bit longer, I would guess. I'm trying to guess now and remember, but it was like a 7-inch, I think, Tonto point, which it kind of comes up at about a 30 or 40 degree angle at the very tip, rather than a nice sweeping edge. It was called a Tonto knife. It's sort of like what you would think is a combat type knife. But so I was talking to one of the dealers there, and that sells the new Cold Steel stuff. And I mentioned to him that I thought I had one of those knives somewhere stuck back in my drawer. And he said his eyes perked up. You can tell when you've said something that somebody really noticed. And he said, well, you want to sell that? And I said, no, I don't want to sell it. Well, that piqued my interest. And so I went home and looked it up, and those old original USA-made Tonto Cold Steel with a Tonto point on it were selling for $120. And I remember buying that thing years ago for about $40. But they were just U.S.-made stuff. It's just so much better. The quality of the steel, the thickness of the blade, just all of it. And this Master Hunter I got just reminded me that I'll never be without that knife again. I'll never sell that knife, because to me, they're just, if you need to use something, and people are going to find this out the hard way, I'm afraid, Vince. The reason that all of those old time tools were so well made and so put together, and parts put together so that they would last and last and last, is because people had just come out of the Depression, and people didn't have money to spend on stuff and be disposable. They didn't have what's called disposable income like we talk about it now, like it's a flippant thing. It's insane to think in terms of disposable income, in my opinion. But anyway, the reason those things were made so well is because people had to use them to survive, to live every day. And we're in a world of hurt because of the greed of the corporations to move this to a country that is communist. And, Vince, I'm not meaning to jump into political here, but there's a thought process that goes with this. The unemployment rate, they just said, had creeped up a whole 0.1%. They expected 1 million jobs Well, they only got a quarter, just hair over quarter of that, 266,000. And they wonder why that was when they fed these people the extra money on their unemployment. It's like the stupidity of thinking, can't you figure, this is so obvious to anybody that's got a reasonable mind. So if you take that same stupid thought process, people, when they moved their factories and stuff to a communist country that absolutely couldn't care less about quality because their view of human life is so much less than the American ideal of human life, the importance of it. And you think that you're going to move your factories over there and not suffer the consequences of that, because that thought process that they have is going to be expressed in the way that they manufacture. It's expressed in the way they live their lives. It's expressed in their political thought process. And we are being the recipients of that kind of thought process that is costing us terribly, because we can't make anything now that is exactly the way it's supposed to be on a consistent basis. So I'm sorry for ranting right there, but this thing is just, it is.
I'm with you.
To me, it's just insane.
I'm with you. So during the bottom of the hour break, I ran into the garage because I saw two boxes there. And these boxes are long and narrow. And and it says on the outside, there's a label that says made in Pakistan. And then there's a small label on the end that says SH and a little part number, SH 2844. So I said to my son, what are these? So he opened it up and he bought blades made in Pakistan, Damascus type steel, because he's going to make a couple knives for himself. Now the box says, the outside wrapper says made in Pakistan. When you take the nice looking tan brown cardboard box out of the outer wrapping, it says there's a stylized deer head on there. It says Staghorn USA. And then it says, there's a stamp on it that says made with care, handmade. Now, Staghorn USA. It's not USA, so it is a made in Pakistan blade with a crossguard. But if you take out the outer bag, that's a white bag, and you look at the inner box, you could, if you had a store, you could sell it. You could sell this as a blade, Staghorn USA. So it looks like it's made in USA, but it's made in Pakistan. So these other companies in other countries, foreign countries, are aiding and abetting U.S. salespeople to sell their products under fraudulent impressions, as if this is a made in USA product. Staghorn space USA. It's an outrage. So now, and that's the only place that says made in Pakistan is on the outer package. So once you take the outer package off, nowhere on the box does it say make in Pakistan. Okay? So I just want to let the class know, buyer beware, and we are being hoodwinked at every turn. Back to the mowers. So this Cub Cadet we have from 1960 has a cast aluminum mower deck. I have never had to replace the bearings on the mower. I've never had to replace the spindles. I've never had to replace the pulleys in 60 years. Now, this was our neighbor's when we lived on the East Coast. He mowed his lawn twice a week for easily 10 years with this mower before we bought it from him. So that's 6,000 hours. I calculated this morning. That's a lot of hours on a little riding lawnmower. Well, the new Cub Cadet that we have, which is 20 years old, the tubes for the tires went flat. Had to replace the tubes. We haven't had to replace the tube or any tires on the old Cub Cadet. The old Cub Cadet's 60 years old. The old Cub Cadet has a mower deck that's in perfect condition. It's cast aluminum, no rust, original wheels on the mower, and original blades. 60 years old. Well, the new mower deck is rusted through. You could drop a jar of vitamins right through the mower deck where it's rusted through already because this is cheap, lousy steel. And it's the same brand, Cub Cadet. But Cub Cadet was taken over or acquired or bought by a company called MTD. MTD, you know, as Murray. Murray was the cheapest, junkiest lawnmower you could get, and the Chinese factory outlets sold them. So the great brand of International Harvester Cub Cadet the quality has been extracted from it to the point where the mower decks wear out. You have to continuously replace blades, etc. And the other mowers that MTD makes that have colors like red and black and green and orange are even worse. So we're talking about spare parts that don't fit, replacement parts that don't fit. It used to be that the Cub Cadet would have, for a 42-inch cut, it had 3 blades, 2 long blades, and in the center, in front of the 2 long blades was a short blade. And the idea was the short blade would cut the overlap, you know, where the stripe in the middle would be, where the 2 long blades would miss, because you don't want the blades crashing into each other. So you would have a separation of, let's say, an inch between, you know, the left blade and the right blade, and then the center blade would cut that inch, actually cut more like a foot. And it was a great job, 3 blades. A little more complicated to make than the new cheap, quality removed mower decks. So now the mower decks have 2 blades. Now, 2 blades, how do you prevent those blades from hitting each other? Well, in the 1960s, a company called Jacobson, they made a mower, and they had one blade that would point, let's say, at 12 o'clock, if you look down on it, on the mower, 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock, and the other blade would be 90 degrees offset at 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. So as the blades turned, they were on a cogged belt that wouldn't slip, and the blades never hit each other. And the blades would overlap the grass so that you'd have no stripe in the middle of uncut grass. Cub Cadet used 3 blades. Jacobson used 2 blades with a cogged belt. The new style, Cub Cadet, is 2 blades. And the idea is just run them real close together. Like separate them by a 1/4 of an inch, and nobody will ever know that there's a 1/4 of an inch of grass that didn't get cut too well between the 2 blades. So the idea was if you keep them close enough, you can make it with 2 blades rather than 3, or use 2 blades without a cogged belt. But when you go to buy replacement blades, I'll tell you what happens when we come back. With our son, and it's a John Deere. And it's one of these new style, just like the new style Cub Cadet that we have. And it has these spindles. And what they do is they put the blades, 2 blades, like a 1/4 of an inch apart, you know, when they're pointing toward each other. So they just miss each other. So everything's got to be perfect. Well, when you go to get replacement blades, and we did, and we bought them at one of those big box stores, Menards, and it said it fit this John Deere mower. Okay? Put one blade on, started it up, and the blade smashed into the other blade. One new blade, one old blade. We thought we'd try one blade first before we put the other one on. And so we took it off and we looked at it. The old blade was a 1/4 of an inch shorter than the new blade. So that 1/4 of an inch is just enough for the blades to smash into each other. That is the tolerance part of today's class that we're trying to tell you about. The spindles that you buy to replace the worn out spindles that are on your mower. The reason you have to replace them is they use alternator bearings, the kinds that you use in an alternator under the hood of your car. And they were never designed to handle the load, the lateral load of a mower blade spinning around at, let's say, 3,600 RPM, and mower blades that could hit a rock. So these spindles, the new Chi-Com spindles, only last about a year, and they come pre-greased. But they have to add more grease to it. How much? Well, just the bearings are greased, but not the entire spindle cavity where the Zerk fitting is. It takes about 50 pumps of grease from a standard size grease gun to fill that cavity. How much grease is that? 1/2 of a standard full-size tube of grease. Half a tube. Now, do you think the average guy is going to pump 50 pumps of grease into that? Probably a couple pumps. That's not enough to do any good at all. So the Then now the pulleys that you buy, the replacement pulleys, when the pulleys fail real quickly, after you hit something with your mower or you mow in heavy grass, the pulleys will spin on the spindles. They have a hexagon hole in the pulley where it mates to the spindle, and that will spin, and the hexagon hole will spin into a round hole, and it will not stay tight to the spindle, so the blade won't turn anymore. So what do? You buy new Chinese spindles, because that's the only place you can get them. Made in China. Regardless of what they say, they're made in China. And they all wobble. They are all substandard. They are all out of tolerance, and they're junk. And they don't fit properly. And the spindles vary from one brand to the other, and none of them is marked with a brand name. So it's hit or miss. You have no idea what brand you're buying from what Chinese company. You don't know what size the spindles are. And all you do is you look at the picture on eBay or Amazon. You say, oh, it looks like it. And it says it fits my Craftsman mower, my Toro mower, my Cub Cadet, my John Deere, my Snapper, my Husqvarna. It fits. And then you put it on, and then a year later, one season later, you're doing the whole job again. And the other thing is the blades are junk. The blades are thin. You hit a rock with an old blade in our Cub Cadet, which we've done over the years, over the 60 years. And all you do is you resharpen the blade. They're real thick. The new ones will bend. And so you have to buy new blades compared to the 60-year-old blades that are still on the old Cub Cadet. Kyle?
Well, Vince, the truth of the matter, my daughter had exactly the same problem you're just talking about. I repaired hers, and the previous owner of that had hit rocks and stuff and had been, actually a brass stud for a corner marker for his property, hit that and bent those old blades. Well, we went ahead and bought new blades for her because that's what she wanted. But I brought those old blades home, put them in my vise, beat them back out flat, and resharpened them and gave them back to her. And I said, these things, because I got them perfectly straight. I mean, there's like an arrow, and now they're sharp as a razor again. And I told her, I said, keep these, because you're never going to be able to buy that good a quality anymore. And in my opinion, folks, the moral of the story for this broadcast is if you see something that you could possibly use or going to need to have to fix, get two, or if you have to buy Chinese stuff, you better buy 2 or 3 of them ahead. But if you can find anything, bearings, seals, anything that's American made, literally where it actually says made in America, made in USA, you better buy it while you can, because I don't think it's going to get any better.
Very well said, Kyle. So, class, that's why we talked about tolerance. And what we meant was the lack of precision. Tolerance equals closeness, or the amount of error. And new Chinese products have so much error, so much slop, that they don't fit properly. They don't mate with the original, the other half of the equation. The other, like the blade with the spindle, the pulley with the spindle with the blade, the spindle with the pulley. If it's one part Chinese and the other part American, they don't fit together. Thank you, Kyle, for being with us. Everyone all set, cocked, locked, hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Bert's with us. Welcome, Bert.
Hey, Vince. Can you hear me okay over there?
Yeah. Thousands of miles away. It's still good signal. Very good.
Yeah. Well, we stretched the string between our soup cans pretty tight, but, there were some storms over the Rocky Mountains recently, so the string might have gotten a little damp over the Rockies.
Yeah, it's working pretty well. It really is.
Good.
So what are we going to talk about
over in your neck of the woods? I know you were commenting on some interesting findings you had on your solar panels.
Okay. Yeah. We have found that the sun. Okay. I've got I've written this down. I was looking through my notebook and I found it. So on Wednesday at 8:45 in the morning, our solar panels were generating 2.4 kilowatts. Now, there's no change to our solar arrays. We have two of them, two sets of solar panels. One is on the roof of the barn. The other one, and that was, let's put it there and see if it works. It's the wrong angle, but I wanted to see if it worked. And the other one is a custom built, we built it ourselves, array that is pointing at the, at the right angle of the sun and southern sky. So those two arrays combined 2.4 kilowatts or 2,400 watts at 8:45 a.m. 4,300 watts at 9:30 in the morning, 4,900 watts at 9:50 in the morning, 5,300 watts at 10 o'clock in the morning, 6,400 watts at 10:50 in the morning. And then yesterday I said on Wednesday, I think we're going to hit 6,800 watts, and that is the maximum that our system, our inverter is designed for. Well, yesterday, I was looking at the panel, the meter on the panel, looking at, how many watts were being generated, and it hit 7,500 watts, at the height of the day. I couldn't believe it. So these are record amounts of solar generation. I'm looking at the sky right now. It's slightly overcast, but bright and sunny. And, we're generating enough electricity at 10 o'clock in the morning to run the well pump, the dishwasher, the washing machine, all lights, broadcast, all simultaneously. No problem whatsoever. This is a record amount of electricity we're generating from the sun. And I mentioned that on the air. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting because we know that solar panels degenerate over time. I mean, whether that's 90% at 5 years or 80% at 10 years or different numbers like that. Better panels will do better, but I've never heard of a panel generating more. So I think we can rule the panels themselves probably out of the picture. One thing I'll have to look up, and I don't know if this is what it is. We know the sun is strongest in June because that's when the Earth is tilted towards the sun more. And, we all get that. The sun is basically the angle is improved, so there's a more direct sunlight. What I'll have to check, though, is the orbit of the Earth around the sun is not a perfect circle. It is somewhat elliptical, and that is completely independent of the tilting of the Earth. So what I'll have to check, and sorry I don't have this data, maybe I can check during the break, is, are we at a point where the Earth is closer to the sun in the orbit right now? And if so, that could be one possible explanation. Otherwise, I think we're back to your theory that the air is clearer right now, and that could be it. And, of course, moisture in the air. Are you having a dry period right now?
No, it's raining like crazy. Everything, the fields are all soggy. I mean, it's not raining at the moment, but we've had more rain than usual. So much rain that, we can't go out in the fields without damaging them.
Wow,
and there's another thing to this. So those panels have not changed in 5 years. Okay. So if we're in an elliptical orbit, you would think that, we might have seen some kind of a change, but this is dramatic. This is, typically we might generate 3,000 watts, at a peak. 7,500 watts is out of sight crazy. I mean, I'm delighted, but I have a feeling that we're going to be paying for this. Some people are going to be paying more than others. So, for example, if this continues, and if the solar rays keep getting stronger and stronger and stronger, the animals that we depend on for food, they're going to have a tough time. Black cows absorb heat, more than white cows absorb heat. So, different breeds of cows. We have Black Angus. So, fortunately, we kept the woods so that the cows can go swimming in the ponds, and they can go for shelter from the sun in the woods in the summer where the leaves will protect them and they'll stay cooler. And it's interesting that the Soil and Water Conservation Department of the government and of the U.S. government and the local agencies, the agencies that help farms out, those guys, they want you to fence your woods such that the cows can't get at them. They want you to fence your streams so the cows can't drink water out of the stream. They want to, preserve the streams for whoever's downstream. It's not like, even if it's on your property, they would prefer that you don't let your cows go in the streams. Well, we have a stream that originates on our property, and I let the cows go in there. If they want to drink out of it, good for them, because that's what they used to do. And those animals were here, before we were here. There were wild animals, and they drank out of the streams before people got here to say, no, you can't do that anymore. And in terms of fencing our animals out of the woods, that's insanity, because they depend on the woods for protection. Protection from the rain, hail, sleet, snow, and blazing heat in the summer. So we did not accept the offer by the government to pay us to keep our cows out of the woods and to pay us to keep our cows out of the stream. And what they would do is they'd literally say, hey, it'd be much better if we drilled a well and you put in a cattle waterer or 2 or 5 or 10, and we'll pay 3/4 of the cost of this if you, fence your cows out of the woods and out of the streams and drill the well. They pay 3/4 of the cost. But do you think that makes sense to? Yeah, they used to pay 90%, and they pay for the fence.
I think the government should just let the cattle ranchers make their own decisions on those kind of things, and not even meddle. But I'm curious, if the cows want to get out of the sun a little bit, do you let them in the barn to watch TV or kick back a little for an hour or two?
No, and I'll tell you why we don't do that. Now, we have a place where if there's a calf that's born and it's freezing cold and it just rained and then it turned, let's say it's 30 degrees, it just rained and it's turning to snow and the cow just got born and it's soaking wet. And if they're soaking wet and they can't be dried off, they'll die from freezing to death. And then let's say it's dropping down to the 10 degrees or so. We can take that little calf. If the mother can't dry it off and take care of it, we can take that calf and put it in the garage or the barn and put some hay down and surround it so it's in a confined area with hay, and it can stay warm until the weather clears up a little bit. The calf dries off, and then mama can take care of it. But the reason we don't put them in the barn and let them watch TV or listen to music is because if they get used to those kinds of conditions, their immune systems will be compromised and they won't be able to survive, other changes in weather. So we don't let them get compromised. We let them tough it out, and it makes for a much stronger calf and cow. That's how we do it. So the summer, the blazing heat.
Yeah,
blazing heat is
there's a rule: don't fool with
rough
nature.
on them, and
yeah.
Don't mess with Mother Nature, right?
So Vince, I looked up the.
Okay, we have. By the way, Bert.
Yeah.
We have a very long delay. It's a second and a half between me and GCN, and then it's probably about close to that between you and GCN. So the sum of that is pretty long. So we need to be careful not to step on each other during today's broadcast until we can fix it. I'll try to fix it during the break. But please continue.
Yeah, I think during the break I'll go outside and try and take up some of the slack on the string, and but it takes a while for that tension to go across the Rocky Mountains. What I was saying was, I did look up the orbit of the Earth. Around the sun, and found some interesting information. It's furthest in July and closest in January. In July, it's called the Opposites, And in January, it's called the Parapsis. And right now, in early May, we're pretty much about in the middle. Maybe a little closer than not, but I'm looking at this graph. So that certainly is not going to account for it, because we would be closer by let's say 10 million kilometers in January.
Okay, that being said, in January, we weren't generating anywhere near the current that we're generating. And it seems like each day it's getting more. So, and that would be, we're going farther away from the sun in this elliptical orbit, right? So that doesn't hold in terms of what I'm seeing, Bert.
Yeah, no, that's correct.
It certainly might make a little bit of sense, except that the after you leave our atmosphere, there's nothing, right? Virtually nothing other than, Elon Musk's satellites and whoever else put satellites up in the way. Other than that, there's not much up there, right? Except space junk.
Yeah, no, it's pretty much a vacuum. That's most of everything is pretty much a vacuum.
Yeah. So what is on the blackboard for today's class?
Well, I thought we'd explore a couple of topics you sent out. You did send out an interesting article, at least to your science advice instructor, on climate change in California and what's going on. And then an interesting tidbit on the Pentagon. I don't know if we'll have time to explore that today, so I thought we could, if we had time, talk about that a little bit.
Sounds great. All right. Bert and I will be right back after these few short announcements. Just a quick note, class. On Wednesday, I went over to Dr. Shealy's clinic in Springfield, Missouri, and I had my past life regression. And on Monday, Dr. Shealy and I will be talking about exactly what happened from his perspective, what he saw, and what I envisioned. And the reason I can't say saw is because my eyes were closed. And so he's had a chance to get his electrodes sharpened and repolished, and they're ready for the next victim, if you would like to be that victim. And of course, I'm kidding. All you do is sit in this recliner, and he talks to you, and you just you participate by speaking whatever comes into your mind, and he guides you by speaking very slowly. That's the whole thing. There's no electrodes, there's no shock therapy, there's no tattoos, there's no potions that you drink, no scents that you smell. It's just the two of you. Unless you're a female, there'll be three. He'll have one of his assistants, a female assistant. It's no charge. And if you'd like to participate, 417-351-5221. That's his number in his clinic, 417-351-5221. That's in Springfield, Missouri. And I have to say that if you can participate and you don't, you're crazy. Okay? It is that good. It is that astounding. But you're going to have to do it soon. And we're going to be talking about it on our next broadcast, which is Monday. Dr. Shealy agreed to discuss what he saw, and I agreed to let him tell you. Bert, back to you. Climate change in California.
Vince, I just want to say that sounds fascinating.
Oh, okay. You want to tune in. That's Monday's broadcast. And he guided me through. This is my second past life regression. And I don't want to spoil what we're going to talk about, but I will tell you it is absolutely riveting. And if you decide that you want to do this and you are willing to participate and not fight it and not say, oh, this is smoke and mirrors, this isn't real. If you want to fight it, you absolutely can. But if you want to go along, he will put you in a hypnotic trance, and I'll tell you what it's like being hypnotized. I've done it twice with Dr. Shealy, and I got to tell you, I sent him an email thanking him when I got back to the farm. I said, I'm 30 years younger. I couldn't believe it. I called Kyle, and he and I talked when I got back, and I was like, I was running at 120 miles an hour. I feel great. You know, Tony the Tiger, great. It's unbelievable what has happened. And we'll talk about it. But yeah, I did do it, and I recommend it wholeheartedly. And for those who might think there's a religious thing where you're going to go to hell if you even consider talking about past life regression, I think that's nonsense. I think it is absolutely on the table to be discussed. And if you can experience this in your life, it'll be one of those things that you'll remember for a very, very long time. So, Bert, if you have any questions, you can email them to me, and I'll ask the questions for you on Monday, or you can call in and talk with Norm Shealy about what happened with me yourself. So it's quite fascinating, and he's a brilliant guy. I mean, he's got well over 10 inventions, well over 10 patents too. He's written over 30 books. He's got 3 PhDs and a medical degree. There is no one. Bert, do you know anybody who has 3 PhDs and a medical degree, and who is a neurosurgeon, and who was Surgeon of the Year, and who wrote 30 books, and who has over 10 patents and 10 inventions? Do you know anybody?
Could that be Al Gore?
Well, you can't count him inventing the internet as 10 inventions, can you?
I don't know. Sounds fascinating, Vince. Without giving it away, I do have one question. You said it's your second. Did you explore the same places and live, or again, without giving it away, or was it totally different this time?
I will say this. Now, not that I'm holding anything back. I would want to discuss it with Dr. Shealy on Monday. But I'll tell you this. A person could imagine himself or herself. People embellish who they are. So I could have said, I was a general. I was the president of a country. I was the ruler of an island. I was a great warrior. I was nobody. And I was the same nobody twice in a row. And I was a complete failure twice in a row. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm the same guy I am right now. Bert's with us, and Bert's a patent holder and an engineer, radio frequency engineer in California. Bert, we've known each other for about 50 years, right? And hard to believe, but it's true. And during this past life regression that we'll discuss on Monday, I just wanted to tell you this, that I'm still that same person that I was 300 years ago. And that's what I learned. And Dr. Shealy will tell you whatever he's going to tell you. I have no idea what he's going to say. But if you want some insight into who Vincent Finelli is, you'll find out more on Monday for 2 hours with Dr. Norm Shealy on this broadcast classroom. So I don't know what he's going to say, but I gave him permission to say it. Whatever it is, he's going to say it. And that's quite fascinating. So any other questions about that?
No. How's the connection right now? I sent some, during the half-hour break, I sent some minions up to the roof. We pulled about 20 feet of string in, so it should be a little tighter now.
Yeah, it's working great. By the way, in addition, while you were winding up that string, I checked on the display. We're generating at 1050, 5,800 watts, and that's another record. So it's not like it's jumping every single day, but these are really, really strong solar rays that we're able to capture and use by the solar panels, and it's working great. So climate change in the West.
Yeah, we're going through a drought in California. We're probably going to have some emergencies announced soon by the governor. Hasn't been announced yet, but we're probably going to have another year of water rationing. I'm guessing there, but it seems likely. It's not the worst drought that we've had, for sure. We did have, a fair amount of rain for a couple of months during the rainy season. So it's not like we had no rain. And what's funny is when I first moved here to California, people were telling me we had a season when it didn't rain at all, which I found hard to believe, but I looked it up, and absolutely in 1977, it didn't rain in Northern California, at least this part here, middle to Northern California, Silicon Valley. It did not rain the entire year. In the beginning of the year or the end of the year, it just didn't rain. So we're nothing like that. That was a pretty bad drought. And of course, the worst drought was the 29 to 34 drought called the Dust Bowl. And, we've seen movies about that one.
I was thinking about what you said about 77. That's around the time that you moved to California. I think you moved there a little sooner than that, but not much. And here's the thing that I don't understand. In 7th or 8th grade class, I was taught that, the water molecules, H2O, meaning 2 atoms of hydrogen, 1 atom of oxygen, would combine and you'd have water, 1 molecule of water. And as the hydrologic cycle, water would evaporate from the surface of the earth. It would go up into the atmosphere, and it would bang into a dust particle or a smoke particle. And that extra weight of the smoke particle would cause the water molecule to become heavier, and gravity would pull it downward. And it would bang into another water molecule and another one, and pretty soon you had a whole drop of rain. And that's what would cause rain. Now, I was watching the Rockford Files, that was filmed in the mid-'70s, and you could see over L.A., Los Angeles, this brown cloud of air pollution. And I remember that California had started implementing really stricter and stricter automobile pollution controls to reduce this smog, and that's what it was called, smoke and fog, over the big cities in California. Now, what I don't understand is in 77, I believe that's the year you mentioned, there was a terrific amount of smog in California, specifically over the big cities like San Jose and San Francisco and Los Angeles, etc. There was these bowls. You could see it if you flew in. You could see a dome, a tan-colored, brown-colored dome over the city, which was pollutants. Now, what I don't understand is if you had more pollutants in the air, how come you didn't have more rain? It doesn't tie. So sometimes science can't explain everything, right?
Well, I'm not sure if we can tie it to pollution, but what they did do, scientists during that drought in 1977 started studying climate and satellite photos and satellite temperature readings, and it was during that drought or soon after that they discovered the influence of El Nino and a sort of an oscillation in the weather in the Pacific Ocean, and realized, and we don't know exactly what causes it, but we know there is something that we've now called El Nino, and it affects weather cycles. And is it driven by the sun? Is it driven by underwater temperatures? We're still not 100% sure, but we've been able to track it, and also a related effect called La Nina. So we've since learned more about those. So that played an influence. Could pollution have played an influence? Hard to say. We did have droughts in later years, and pollution's obviously gotten a lot better in California. And then we've also had years with huge rain. Just a couple of years ago, we had, for me, the most, I have a weather station, the most rain I've ever recorded, like 30 inches of rain, which is almost unheard of, that I had here in Silicon Valley. And, I'd say the average is maybe 10 to 12 inches. This season so far I've had, I think it's somewhere around 7 inches, something, maybe 8 inches not so much. So below average, but nowhere near, say, a 0 year, or I think the lowest I had other than that was maybe 4 inches of rain one rainy season, which goes from the fall to the spring. So basically it's the end of one year and the beginning of the next year is our rainy season.
Okay, so what's in store? Do you think the governor is going to say, listen, forget those homeowners association covenants, and where you've got to keep your lawn green, and forget that, and if you keep your lawn green, we're going to fine you? Is that what you're looking at?
Vince, that doesn't account for that much watering your lawn. I mean, everyone thinks it does, but most of the water in California goes to the farmers. And really, we need better planning. I mean, there are solutions. We've stopped building dams. The good news is the biggest dam here in my part of the state, total coincidence, but we've drained it to seismically retrofit it. And when the work's done in about a year, we'll be able to fill it to its maximum capacity, which will be great. So we picked a good year to drain that reservoir and do the dam work. But we need more dams. We need bigger dams. Pumping water underground does not work because we've done that, and you end up ruining the ground aquifers. San Jose has sunk many feet because in the early days when people moved to San Jose, they just started pumping water like mad, and the whole city sunk, including the airport where it is, and all sunk. And even more recently, just during the last few years in the Central Valley, they were pumping more water, and they caused more harm than good. They ruined their aquifers, so there's less water in the future, and it also caused pollution to leach into the groundwater. So it was just, pumping more water out of the ground is foolhardy and really not the solution. We just need to trap the water we have and use it better. And, too often, I love the environment. I love animals of all kinds, but too often there's rules that force us to drain water from reservoirs to protect one certain type of fish. And we drain, thousands of gallons of water just to keep creeks flowing. And then we don't have that water when there's a drought year like we have now. So we got to be a little smarter on how we regulate water. So I think we can fix it. It just takes better long-term planning.
Yeah, and like the governments that tell farmers, hey, we'll give you money to drill wells, and we'll pay for 3/4 of the well, and the farmer pays for 1/4 of it, and we'll put fencing in to get your cows out of the woods. By doing that, we disrupt what nature has built. And drilling wells is crazy. I remember on the East Coast, my wife's parents, and I've known my wife since 4th grade. And so I spent a lot of time at their house. And they had a well that was roughly 100 feet deep, a rough number. And it worked great for years and years and years. And all of a sudden, more people moved into the area, and they all drilled wells. And they watered their lawns, and they put in swimming pools, and, more people, more water consumption. And the height of the water in the well kept going down, 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 till the point where the well was dry. And they had to drill a new well, like hundreds of feet, maybe 200 or 300 feet deep, because all the people that moved in used the water that used to be under my wife's parents' house on their property. And it wasn't just their well that went dry. Everybody that built a house in the 1950s that was in their little village, all their wells went dry. So, instead of having reasonable sized houses, they built these mega mansions. Mega mansions, and, extravagant use of water rather than reasonable use of water. And it caused problems for everybody. So, what these stupid government people do is they cause problems they haven't thought it through. They haven't thought it through. And what we have on our farm is a great way to water the cows. Literally, class, what happens is, this is a hilly area in the Ozarks. We live in the Ozark Mountains. That's where our farm is. And so when it rains, water lands on the grass, like pasture, just grass. And the grass keeps the erosion from happening. So as the rain travels downhill, we have ponds that we made, just excavated, scooped out the earth, and we have these ponds that catch the water that just runs downhill. And then in the pond, we have a piece of pipe that allows water to come out of the pond into a cattle waterer. You can think of it like a toilet with a valve that keeps the water level from a system that think of the cows drinking out of the toilet. But it's a great big 300-gallon system that has a float valve, and it takes water as needed out of the pond, puts it in this cattle waterer that's automatically, mechanically operated, and it lets them have as much water as they want. Class Bert's with us. And Bert, you're talking about more dams in California to hold the water for use, later. Well, that's exactly what we have here on our farm. Exactly. We have these ponds, which have dams, and we have spillways, so if there's too much rain, the water will spill through the spillway rather than push the dam over. And then we have a piping system that conserves the water so it doesn't get wasted. And then we have ponds also that are just ponds that are open for the cows to go swimming in. So, they like to swim, and they can go swimming and cool off in in these really hot summer days, and they can drink out of them. So that's what we do here at the farm. I just wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, I didn't know cows can swim. Do they actually swim, or are they just wading in the water?
Well, I think they can swim. Our ponds aren't deep enough for them to, really go swimming, but we call it that. And they walk in there, and they like to get wet, and they like to use their tails and splash water on their backs and cool off. I mean, these cows are, 1,100 pounds. They're black. I mean, they get really, really hot in the sun, so they like to cool off. They're just like the rest of us.
And when they jump in the
dogs
pool,
like to swim.
Do they yell cannonball to their fellow cows and jump in and make a splash?
Well, when we lived in Virginia, one of the calves went swimming we had a swimming pool, and went swimming. And it was one of these steel-sided vinyl liner pools with a concrete walk around it. And in the low end, which is 3 feet, this calf was walking around, and her hoofs just poked like 1,000,000 holes in the liner. So we had to get a new liner for that pool. But they swim, I guess.
Yeah. So Vince, we were talking about dams, and I think we're in agreement that it's the perfect solution for more water. And there's another benefit. We've talked before about electricity and energy and what clean energy is. There is no cleaner energy than hydroelectric. I mean, let's face it, there's virtually no pollution from a hydroelectric plant. And what better way to kill two birds with one stone? And I don't mean to kill any birds, but, to solve two problems at once. Build more dams and put electric generators on the output of the water. I mean, that's just such a no-brainer that we should be doing more of that. And again, there are some people, though, that protest against it, saying that, we're diverting water and hurting the native fish population and changing nature. So, I mean, human beings do change nature. That's the nature of human life. But I just think dams and hydropower make so much sense.
Mm-hmm. I'm in total agreement with you. And Nikola Tesla was involved with Westinghouse in building the electric hydro-powered generators at Niagara Falls, wasn't he? Isn't he the guy that did that? I believe that is correct. And so we have had electric generators for a very long time. You can turn them by diesel engines. You can turn them by steam engines. You can turn them by wind blades, wind turbines. You can power them with nuclear generated steam. But the bottom line is the generator part is pretty much the same. So it depends on how you turn that shaft, whether you turn it with water or air or nuclear-powered steam or coal-powered steam or natural gas-powered steam. But the generation is very much the same. And so the real bottom line, Bert, I submit to the class, is we need to use less electricity, not more. And that's what we are doing here at the farm. We're using as little electricity as we possibly can and still keep going, rather than having more and more electricity, more and more extravagant uses of electricity. I mean, people heat their pools. Why? Why do they have to heat their pools? Why do they have to heat their driveways? Why? You know, extravagant uses of energy. I submit that we should use less energy rather than more energy. Not everybody needs an SUV. Not everybody needs to ride around in a General Motors Suburban or a Humvee or a four-wheel drive vehicle, you know, to ride around the city. That's crazy. Your thoughts?
Should we bring back horses?
Well, you know, horses will certainly slow us down, because if you want to jump on your horse and get going, it's going to take you like 20 minutes, you know, to get the saddle, unless you're going to ride bareback, right? And, you have to make sure your horse is already watered and, you know, fueled up for the trip. So, and by the way, that's why towns are like 20 miles apart at the most, because that's how long you could ride your horse for, you know, go to the store and come back. That'd be about it. 20 miles. That's why the spacing of the most towns and cities are 20 miles apart. Hey, Bert, we just went through an hour of broadcast time. Looking forward to seeing you next Friday, same time, same station. Bert's with us, and he is our science instructor, senior instructor. Thanks so much for being with us. Yeah. Hey, don't forget, if you want to call in on Monday, I'd love to hear from you.
Sure.
And class, same applies to you.